Back for another episode of Swamp Talk, Will. It's good to be back.
Hello.
A week ago, though, things were looking pretty good, Will.
Very good.
We'd come off that great series against Savannah and a win over Atlanta.
What?
5-game winning streak.
What?
Longest of the season.
What?
Thank you, Pat McAfee, for that. But unfortunately, things have kind of turned. Now the Blades have lost their last 3 games, picking up 1 point last Friday against Greenville in a shootout loss where Florida certainly let it get away. Then they lost the next night in what was not the most thrilling of hockey games, I shall say, on affiliation night. And then last night, a loss to the Jacksonville Icemen to start off a 3-game road trip. So certainly things feeling a little bit different. I mean, you can say, yes, the teams that they lost to were the top team in the division and a team that's in the playoff hunt. But you can't just beat the teams below you in the standings and expect to be in the playoffs, particularly given that Florida doesn't have a lot of games against Savannah and Atlanta remaining on the schedule. The majority of the schedule is the 3 teams Florida is fighting for those playoff spots with down the rest of the way.
Yeah, this is turning into a season where at some point in time you're going to have to upset some people. You're going to have to go into some hostile environments in a game where you're not favored, and Florida will need to come out victorious on the other side of that. In the games against Greenville, hats off to the Swamp Rabbits. They're a great team. Florida able to get a point out of one of those games against the Swamp Rabbits, but the games again, or the one game against Jacksonville, that's a game that you're really circling your calendar. You're trying to beat that team desperately. Florida hasn't been able to do that all season. They're a team that's directly in front of them in that playoff race, and they pose a big threat to potentially bumping Florida out of the playoff seeding. So when you play teams like South Carolina, Orlando, Jacksonville, those are the big games that you need to win, and Florida needs to shift that gear and start beating those initial 3 teams right in front of them.
Yeah, Florida has a combined 18 games remaining against Jacksonville, South Carolina, and Orlando, the 3 teams Florida's fighting with for those playoff spots.
Yeah.
We'll go in chronological order here. First game was last Friday. What ended up being a 4-3 shootout loss for Florida, their first shootout loss of the season, second shootout game of the year, first since the season opener back in October. So it's been quite a while. What's painful about that one isn't just the loss itself, because you get to a shootout, that's just the Seals competition. It's not real hockey at that point. You can't really, you're basically tied, and then just Greenville earns the extra point. What hurts is that Florida was 2.3 seconds away from 2 points in a game where they played pretty well.
Yeah.
Certainly, I would say their best of the last 3 games. But anytime you give up a goal like that, a tying goal with 2 seconds left, boy, that hurts. That hurts.
The whole game did feel like Florida controlled it, but then as the third period marched on, Greenville just kept applying more and more pressure. And for the most part, the Florida defense played really tight, played really complete.
It was basically just one lapse at the very end at the worst possible time.
It was one just loose puck right in front of the crease, kind of on the edge of that left side circle. And that's the killer. You can play, it's like guarding Luka Doncic. You can play, 23 seconds of great defense, but it's that last second that you got to worry about, and he's going to make you pay. So you can play great defense, play a full 3 periods or just about a full 3 periods of great hockey, but that one little hiccup right at the end for Greenville to tie it up. Now you're talking about, at least you're getting a point, but it would be great to take 2 points and not give anything over to Greenville. So just kind of a tough one to take right there, and tough to see. And you would have loved for the team to get the 2 points anyways, but just didn't happen.
Yeah, 1 point is nice, but it certainly felt like a game where Florida gave away a point rather than earning one. Because if the script is flipped and Florida scores with 2 seconds left, you lose in a shootout still.
Yeah.
You still got a point that you weren't going to get. But the other way around certainly hurts quite a bit. Florida, they had a chance for redemption the next night. Greenville scores 49 seconds into the game on affiliation night. And that was pretty much it in terms of anything for that game. Well, there wasn't a lot going on Saturday. Greenville rode the 1-0 lead all the way to the end of the match to get the win.
That might have been, what was it? It was probably the fastest second period I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Felt like there were only 2 or 3 whistles that entire time. But, I mean, yeah, that's one of the games where it's, the energy is very different because you knew how close you were the night before. And then you've got to get ready for a game the next night. That's not going to be an easy game because Greenville is as good as they are. And then the Swamp Rabbits score immediately and then basically just kind of park the bus for the better part of the next 3 periods. So it's a tough game to take. It's probably one of the strangest results that we've seen this year, and it's a very rare occasion where Florida is completely shut out in a game.
Only the second time this season. The other time they were shut out, also a 1-0 loss. That one an OT loss to the Adirondack Thunder back in early December.
Yeah.
So sort of the opposite, where that one had a very early goal that stood all the way. We had to go all the way into OT to get the goal there. So that game last Saturday, that was the last meeting of the season against the Greenville Swamp Rapids, the first South Division opponent that Florida is completely finished with, at least for the regular season. Florida now 15 points behind Greenville for the top spot in the South Division. You don't ever want to say that it can't happen because there's still plenty of hockey left to go, but Florida no longer has any direct control over whether or not they climb closer to that first place lot because they don't play Greenville anymore this season. It's out of their hands. They've got to hope for a lot of help on the out-of-town scoreboard.
Yeah, and I honestly think now the way the table is formatted, you're basically looking at now there's only 3 available playoff spots because Greenville is so established at the top. It would be still possible, don't get me wrong, but it's very unlikely for the Swamp Rapids to come down from that perch. So now you've got to talk about, all right, now we're in a little bit of a narrower channel here. We've got 3 teams in front of us, fighting for 3 spots. 3 teams right in front of us. I mean, it's not like the gap between the Everblades and the 4th place team is very big.
They're tied with the Orlando Solar Bears right now, and then
even better
after last night's game, Florida sitting 4 points behind the Jacksonville Icemen, which we'll get to that game in a moment, and 3 points behind the South Carolina Stingrays, who sit in 3rd.
Yeah.
So it's
anybody's race.
There's no room, especially with the amount of times these teams are all going to play each other.
Yeah. But now you're not playing Greenville anymore this season, which is, in a way, it's like, all right, we don't have to run into the best team in the ECHL right now. It also is a little bit tough because you would love, as a team, you'd love to prove it to yourself that you can beat this team.
I don't think so much Florida needs to prove to themselves that they can beat this team.
They've already done that.
They've beaten Greenville a couple times this year, and going back a couple of years, they've beaten everybody in the playoffs back-to-back, including Greenville in the first round in 2022. I think it would be more so it would be nice to play Greenville just because that's the caliber of opponent you're going to be playing in the playoffs that you have to beat, right? And you always want to test yourself against the best. What iron sharpens iron?
Yep.
Is that the
iron hardens iron?
Iron hardens iron. Thank you. That's the cliche I was looking for.
I'm a blacksmith.
Yeah. Anyways, those are the kind of opponents you want to play, right? You don't want to get into the playoffs just beating up a bunch of softies, and then when it's time to really perform against the best of the best, you don't know because you haven't played and beaten the best of the best.
Yeah,
so,
it's like a totally different speed.
But there also is the positive side of you're not playing the top team, as you said, that in the ECHL right now. You don't have to deal with them in the regular season. And Florida, they showed it last season. They had no problem going up against the division leader in South Carolina, the Brabham Cup champion in Idaho at the bookends of the playoffs, and handling business against those 2 clubs.
And I think this is, it's a little bit of a precarious position for the Everblades to be in, but it is also, it's a very simple position because it's not like Florida is buried and they need, we need X to beat Y, but we need Z to beat X and all that.
Yeah, they're not looking at the scoreboard looking for a bunch of help. Florida very much controls their destiny.
Yeah, it's just if you beat the teams in front of you on a night-to-night basis, you will be in the playoffs.
That is the case. Unfortunately, Florida tried that last night with one of those teams, Jacksonville. If Florida had won that game, they would have been tied with the Icemen for 3rd place in the South Division. Instead, it's the Icemen getting a 5-2 win, and certainly a game where Jacksonville, they used their home ice really well to their advantage with just the energy on their bench. They were strong at 5-on-5. Special teams, neither team really got a whole lot going, but Jacksonville, they had the better chances. They were able to chase Evan Cormier. There was no doubt which team won that game, and it wasn't the score told the story in that one, I would say. So the first test for Florida, they come out on the wrong side of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's always tough to see those kinds of games, and this was a game that was certainly circled because Jacksonville has given Florida a lot of trouble earlier this season. You're going into a very, very hostile environment. Jacksonville leading the league in an average attendance at around 8,000. So it's always going to be a tough game, even if it is a midweek clash. And Florida started the first period and the second period extremely well, scoring just a couple minutes into the first period thanks to Bobo Carpenter and 19 seconds into the second period thanks to Logan Lambden. But it was just kind of the time after those first goals that sort of Jacksonville found its stride. I mean, Florida, those were their only 2 goals of the games, and Jacksonville just kind of controlled the back halves of all 3 periods.
Yeah, it just seemed when Jacksonville scored, they were able to stack shifts off of it with help from the crowd, whereas when Florida scored, the Icemen did a good job of sort of quashing anything Florida was building off of the energy from those goals. Those are the teams you're going to need to beat. Florida, they finished the month of January with a 7-3-2 record, vaulting them back into the playoff hunt. Now you've got a February where you're going to be facing some challenging teams from outside the division, Will. Not often we've seen that this year, but before we can talk about that, we've got to talk to a very cerebral mind on the Everblades roster, a guy who's always a delight to talk to, Andrew Fyten, joining Swamp Talk after this.
And welcoming on to the show, the next guest of the podcast, Mr. Andrew Fyten. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on.
Me. Yeah.
How's the season's been kind of marching on? You're in a little bit of a spot right now, but season's been productive?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's been good. Team's been coming along a little slower than we'd like, but I think we're getting better each week and each game and just working towards becoming a good team to make a run in the playoffs.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, last year you went on quite the run in the playoffs, winning a Kelly Cup right out of university. What was that like, jumping straight from your college days in Canada into a team going on a playoff run, going deep and competing for a Kelly Cup?
It was unreal. I didn't really know what to expect coming down here. Obviously, it was my first experience pro, but I was so blessed and thankful for how welcome I was here. All the older guys, those veterans that helped us win that championship were just such great people, great guys on and off the ice, and it was a blast. It was so much fun.
And after a bit of a hectic summer, you made the decision to come back down to Southwest Florida. What was it about the Blades? Besides, obviously, okay, I've won a cup there. I have a chance to do that again here. What else was it that made you want to come back?
I think just seeing what they've built here over the last few years, I think it's just a winning culture, and it's very, very competitive every day. They don't put up with anything other than trying to win and being the best we can. So that was very appealing to me and my values and beliefs. So I think that was the biggest thing, just the organization and the people that Craig Brush and Brad Ralph bring in. I just really sat well with me, and I wanted to be a part of it and can continue what the people before me have built here. Yeah.
And not only was last year your first pro experience, it was your first time playing for a team in the United States. You look down the sheet of teams that you played for. It's WHL, it's U Sports with Mount Royal University. Now you're coming down not just to America, but to pretty far South America in Fort Myers and Estero. So what was that adjustment like coming down here for your first pro year?
It was different for sure. It was actually kind of a pleasant surprise to get down here. I wasn't really expecting the community to know much about hockey or be really involved. But once I got down here, I saw how passionate our fan base was, and not even that, but you look over on the community rink side, all the kids that are here and how much the game is growing around the community here. I was really impressed, and yeah, like I said, it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, well, I think when we had Ernie Hartlieb on a few weeks ago, he said the reason the game has grown so much is because a bunch of the former professional guys, they come down here, they retire, and their kids play hockey. So that's kind of how the game has grown up here.
Yeah, for sure. Having the weather, I think everyone that comes down here and sees what it's like, I think the majority of people I talk to would say they'd want to move down here and live here just because of the weather and the people. It's a nice cherry on top to be playing in a place like this.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, comparing it to Canada, this wasn't the first championship you won because you did win with Swift Current back in 2018. You're playing for a small town in Saskatchewan, quite different from here, but the championship run, how would you compare the two of them?
It's just a lot different, professional to major junior, a lot younger. Obviously, we're more mature now that we're older, but very similar on the hockey side, just an absolute grind. I think we played 26 games there back in Swift Current, and that was, it's always great winning. It's just so much fun. Still close with a lot of those guys on that team. So going through something like that with teammates, you just become friends for life, and it's a bond that can't really be taken away from you.
And you mentioned it earlier, and you mentioned it there. The values of winning mean a lot to you. So how long did it take you when you came down to the Everblades for Mountain Royal to sort of realize the winning culture that this team prides itself on was something real, not just talk from the team trying to get you to sign?
Honestly, it was my first game. I flew down and I met the team in Orlando. And my first game, we ended up losing a close game to, it was, I don't know, maybe a 1 or 2 goal game. But just that feeling of losing, and I came in after the dressing room and I could see how much pride there was in the room, because I think Orlando was a little bit lower team in the standings, and how pissed off everyone was after that game. I could just tell. You just get that feeling when you're in the room. You know how much pride there is and how much meaning wins to the whole group. So I would say it was basically right away I knew I was in a good spot.
And is that kind of an attitude that you've seen transition over to this year about just the pride and the winning mentality?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of new guys at the start of the year, and it's kind of taken a little bit longer. But I'd say right before the All-Star break, we started to hit our stride, and it's started to mean a lot more to each and every guy in the room. And I think you can just see that culture and that pride developing more and more in our room. And I think we're in a good spot right now.
Absolutely.
Right now, you're at home rehabbing an injury while the rest of the team is on the road. So you're kind of watching at home just like the fans. And when you're at your place just watching the game on TV, how do you watch it? Are you just strictly watching like a fan, cheering, oohing and awing during the big moments of the game? Or are you making notes on what you'd like to do when you get back on the ice against these guys? Or how do you view the game when you're not on actually physically there with your team?
Yeah, it's pretty tough for me. I think people who have watched me, I'm a pretty fiery personality, and I love the game. I'm very passionate about it. So honestly, when I'm watching, whether it's in the stands or at home on the couch, I have a hard time keeping my emotions low. I just want to be out there battling with the boys. So sometimes I'm screaming and standing up and hollering at the TV. But yeah, I'm mostly just watching and trying to take it in and see if there's anything I can help the players with. Just try and stay involved. You're away from the team, so watching kind of makes you feel like you're in the loop a little bit still, and just try and stay involved with the group.
And have you always been kind of a vocal hockey fan, yelling at the TV?
No, like if I go to a random hockey game, you won't see me. I'm pretty relaxed and chill. But when it's my boys out there and my team, it just means a little bit more to you. They're kind of like my family, so I just want to be out there battling.
And you're from Alberta, so obviously a big hockey rivalry there. So who'd you grow up rooting for?
Weird enough, my team was kind of always the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't really. When I was young, the Flames made a run against the Lightning in 2006. And, I liked a couple players on the Flames, McGinley, Conroy, a couple of those guys. But for some reason, once Stamkos was in Tampa, that was kind of the guy I liked and followed. So was never much of a Flames or Oilers fan, but I still would watch them when I was young.
Have you been up to Amalie Arena since coming down here? Seen a Lightning game in person?
No, I haven't made it too far out of Fort Myers yet.
Not the and now you're playing against the Lightning affiliate anytime you play against Orlando, so it's a little bit of a full circle moment for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is there a team? Obviously, we're down to the home stretch of the season, but from your perspective, is there always a team that you or the team kind of thought about beating more? Was it the two teams in Florida, whether that be Orlando or Jacksonville, or is there like a South Division team that the team really circles its calendar for?
I mean, at this point, for me, it's kind of all of them. I think we've established ourselves as kind of the top dog in the division, obviously winning the last 2 years. I think that kind of puts a target on your back where teams want to beat you every night and see you're falling kind of. So I think we have a rivalry with everyone in our division. I don't think we're very liked, and we have that confidence and maybe a little bit of arrogance that we're the top team, and so we're seeing each team's best every night, and so we have to bring our best, and I just think that makes us better. But yeah, I think we've kind of developed a rivalry with most teams.
And that's something that Brad Ralph has talked about, and it's something that we've heard. I've actually heard it from both goalies, Evan Cormier and Cam Johnson, say the phrase, pressure is a privilege. So is that kind of an attitude that's going into the locker room? Every night you're the back-to-back Kelly Cup champions. Like you said, you're getting the team's best. Is that a pressure that you guys cherish or don't really love?
Absolutely. You kind of have to, if you want to be one of the top teams, you have to cherish that. And, pressure makes diamonds, so you got to be able to work through that and be willing to accept it and embrace it.
A couple games against the Savannah Ghost Pirates coming up tomorrow as we're recording this. So when you're prepping for a team, let's say Savannah for these 2 games and your personal game if you're playing, what goes into sort of a game day prep for this group? I know you got your video and your morning skate, but what goes into that, and what else is there for you, your personal prep for a game?
Yeah, I think it's just being aware. There's so much movement in this league. You got to keep a close eye on the rosters because you kind of pick up on teams' tendencies, especially as the year goes on. You kind of know what you're expecting. And there is a certain degree where you kind of have to switch strides and adjust, make little tweaks to how each team plays, versus Greenville's a little bit more structured, where Savannah might be a little bit more run and gun off the rush. So you just have to be more mentally prepared than anything. Just be ready for the type of game that you're about to go into.
And just kind of the format of the league, apart from, what we just saw against Savannah with the 5 games, 3 here, 2 on the road in Georgia. That's a little unusual, but you are still, kind of playing the same teams either 3 times in a week or twice in a week in this instance against Savannah. So does that kind of help the game preparation, especially on those kind of final Saturday games?
Yeah, for sure. As the season goes on, kind of like I said, you get to learn the tendencies, and you kind of know what to expect going into a game. And I find as the season goes on, the games just get more intense because you kind of, like we were talking about the rivalries, you start to know those guys. Every time you're hitting someone, giving a cross check, just builds up that intensity for the next time you're going to see them. That 5-game stretch was a little bit crazy. I think you saw the tempers flare towards the end of that 4 or 5-game series. But yeah, it's lots of fun.
Very nice.
And finally, this is a team that has expectations of competing for a 3rd straight Kelly Cup, something that's never been done in league history before. So when you're dealing with that as a part of that, sort of the pressure of history, of a chance to do something that's never been done in this league before, how does that feed into your locker room with, we have a chance to do something that's really special?
I think we talk about it and expect it, but at the same time, in a long season like this, you have to stay present and just, be where your boots are at and kind of take it day by day. We're just trying to get better each day, so we're just building and building. So when that time comes, when we're called on to do our job in the playoffs and those big opportunities, that we're just ready to do that. But I think the biggest thing is to just not look too far ahead, just do your job day to day. And if you're doing that, giving your best and getting better, as we've seen in the 2 years past, it kind of works out on its own.
Wise words from Andrew Fyten. Thank you very much for joining us today on Swamp Talk.
Thanks, Fights. Appreciate it.
Swamp Talk continuing on after this. Andrew Fyten, thank you for joining us on Swamp Talk. Always fun talking with him. He's usually got something insightful to say about either himself or this team. And I would say our interview with him, no different.
Yeah, I mean, he's always got a very surrounding outlook on the game and on his career, and what steps he needs to take to improve as a hockey player and everything that's gone on. So the interview kind of shed some light on that, so I'm glad we got to talk to him.
Yeah, very happy that he was able to join us on Swamp Talk. Will, in the month of January, did you get tired of the Savannah Ghost Pirates at all?
I mean, we played them 5 straight games, but all 5 of those games were wildly entertaining.
Well, are you ready for 2 more? Because that's what the Blades have now. 2 games at Enmarket Arena, Florida's last trip to Savannah this season. Savannah, they're going to come down to Florida later in March. But your last 2 games on the road, perfect timing because Kyle Newver's suspension that he got 2 weeks ago against the Ghost Pirates comes to an end at the perfect time for him to return to the building where he made himself notorious once again.
You think you think there was a little bit of looking at the schedule when they were issuing the suspension? Or?
I think there was a little bit of not looking at the schedule when they issued that suspension. But
So we can expect
Nothing you can do about it.
We can expect a pretty physical game these next two matchups.
I would imagine that. So, unfortunately, Michael McNiven, the goaltender who fought Cam Johnson, is not with Savannah anymore. He went overseas to Europe. So, I don't know if we're going to see a repeat of round 2.
This guy just fights Cam Johnson and he goes over to Europe?
Yeah, he just dips.
No round 2?
Doesn't want that smoke from Cam Johnson. So, that's a situation for that, which is unfortunate. But who knows? Savannah, they got 3 other goalies who maybe there's a willing participant there, or maybe Cam Johnson can go fight a player. Who knows? We've seen that before.
It's true.
It's even rarer, I'd say, than a goalie fight for a goalie to fight a skater. But Cam would be willing to do it under the right circumstances. I would not be surprised, though, if we see some very physical games. I mean, that 2-week stretch changed both teams' seasons, with Florida winning 4 of 5. They get right back into the playoff race and push Savannah far down the standings, who've now fallen into 7th. Atlanta has passed them in the standings. So I think the Ghost Pirates, they know that basically to make the playoffs at this point, they need to go on like a 10-game heater, something ridiculous. And they'd love to get that started against the team that pushed them into this spot.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this when the series was ongoing on one of our more recent episodes of Swamp Talk, but this has really turned into a real rivalry between these two sides, not just because of that 5-game series, but because of the proximity in the standings and the success that Florida's had over the seasons and what Andrew said about getting every team's best every single night. So this has really turned into a must-watch television if you're a Blades fan or if you're just a hockey fan in general.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be 2 exciting games, but Florida, they're not so much worried about providing a great fan experience. They're looking for wins.
They want to get back in the win column big time. They need to start scrounging up some points. They want to start February off on the right foot. Savannah, like you said, 7th place team, hasn't played a lot of great hockey this season, but they did beat Florida in the first game of that 5-game series. You know that they are capable of beating you guys on any given night, and now they're back home. And granted, Florida got 2 straight wins in Savannah a couple of weeks ago.
But a lot of that was buoyed by the power play being red hot.
Exactly. And Savannah definitely not looking to repeat.
Yeah, the power play hasn't scored in either of the last 2 games for Florida, so it's a little bit cooled off. But that offers a chance on the other side for Florida to get back to some power play success. And then after those 2 games against Savannah, just briefly touching on this before the end of the episode, Florida in the month of February, they're going to have 6 games all at home against non-divisional opponents. First, it's the Adirondack Thunder. They're coming in next week for a trio of games against the Blades. And then later in the month, the Worcester Railers. Did I pronounce that correctly,
You
Will?
did. Worcester.
Worcester Railers
Not Worcester.
Coming to Hertz Arena. That's how I pronounced it the first time I saw it. Coming to Hertz Arena for another 3 set of games. So even though they're not a divisional opponent, and yeah, sure, like if you lose, you're not giving away points to Jacksonville or South Carolina or something like that. But the points still very much matter. I mean, Adirondack, they're the top team in the North Division. Florida's already seen them. Adirondack took 2 of 3 games against the Blades back in December, and Florida had to come back from down 3 to win that 1 game that they did get. But for Florida to get these wins against Adirondack and then Worcester later in the month, you can't look at them as not as important games as the ones you play against your divisional opponents, because with the race that Florida, maybe if Florida were where Greenville is, you could maybe make some sort of case, but even then that's not the mindset the team would ever want to get into. But certainly with where Florida is in the playoff hunt, dead smack in the middle of one that's going to be tight all the way till the end, that's 12 very important points that are available against North Division opponents this month.
Yeah, and you're going to need to get them. And it's tough that you're not taking points away from the South Division teams, but circling back to what we said about playing Greenville, and these are the teams that you're going to run into if you make another deep playoff run. Adirondack has been playing phenomenal hockey all season. So wouldn't it be a great test if, given the opportunity, you can have Adirondack come into Hertz Arena and you can take 3 games against them? And then that would really prove not just to the Everblades, but to the rest of the South Division that, look, Florida's here to play. They might not be currently in a playoff position as we speak, but they're fully capable of knocking off the best team in the other division in the Eastern Conference and are looking poised to make a playoff run.
The team that right now is the favorite to meet the South Division winner in the Eastern Conference Finals in Adirondack. And the Railers, they're right there. They're in a very similar situation to Florida in a playoff battle with a number of other teams for limited spots.
Yeah, it's kind of, that's the nature of the league. You're not a lot of playoff spots and a lot of teams that are very evenly matched. Worcester and Florida finding themselves in that spot. So that should be a really fun matchup, strong matchup. We got a lot of guys A lot of guys from Massachusetts on the team, so it's a little bit of a
Yes, I know you love that.
the hometown team coming back to
Your
Florida.
hometown team coming
Not
back
my-
to
hey,
Florida.
I'm not from Worcester, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, either way, you look around at the other South Division teams. South Carolina, they went 3 for 3 last week against the Wichita Thunder. That was 6 important points for them. Orlando
Vital.
this week, they're hosting the Wheeling Nailers for a set of 3 games in 3 days. So everyone in the South Division right now is kind of getting a little bit of a taste of the other parts of the league. And it could be those points.
Yeah.
Who does the best outside of the division that determines who's the unlucky team left out.
yeah, it's kind of like the last couple of weeks of the the second to last and the last week of a college football season when maybe your conference schedule is over, but you've got a team maybe coming in from out of conference, or it's another buy-in game. But yeah, I mean you've got to win all the games in front of you if you want to make a run at the college football playoff, and you got to treat these games exactly the same as you would if you were playing South Carolina or Jacksonville or Orlando. There's a team in front of you. One team's got to win. It may as well be you.
Yeah, and unlike the college football playoffs, if you win all your games,
You are pretty guaranteed to get in.
You're guaranteed that you're going to be in a playoff spot if you're Florida. So thank you for joining us for another episode of Swamp Talk, the official podcast of the Florida Everblades. I'm Jake Maurice, alongside my wonderful partner, Will Henschel. Thank you, Will. Appreciate it.
Hey,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. And we'll see you next week for more Everblades talk.